Welcome to the cell, everybody. Cool conversations with the most amazing salespeople I can find.
Everybody, welcome back to The Cell. As I tell everybody, conversations with the coolest salespeople on the planet. So I get to talk to them and I get to self-describe. So Andrew, how does it feel to be one of the coolest salespeople on the planet?
Oh man, I follow you. I follow your stuff. To me, this is like, speaking with sales royalty, to be honest. So I appreciate the
Well,
opportunity.
I, I will take that. To give a full introduction, Andrew Kauffman, who currently is running Time to Give Network, but we were going to chat about, a little bit about everything about old school sales, what drives sales, what you're doing today. Why don't we kick off with this? You are an American in London or the UK. Why don't you just give us the potted history of your sales life and how you come to be the other side of the pond?
Fair enough. Happy to. And again, thanks for the opportunity. So I started my career in sales right out of college or uni, as they say here, at Bankers Trust, just to date myself, and was on the trading floor and was in a fixed income sales role and really took to it. I enjoyed the interaction. I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed being able to counter objections and know who to talk to and when to talk to them. It really helped me to refine those skills. One of the nice things about that job as well is that when you work for a company with a great brand, access is actually not very hard. People want to talk to you. People want to find out what's going on at that tier one bank and what are they seeing and what's going on. So that was actually, maybe it lulled me into a sense of security.
We're going to talk more about access because I know it's something you're passionate about. But yeah, I'm interested because you're right. When you started a company with a huge brand, do you think it maybe gives you this initial impression? Wow, sales is easier than I thought.
Exactly. People are all keen to talk to me and I'm happy to share. And I call, they pick up the phone. I'm like, wow, this isn't so bad. What's all the
Yeah.
complaining about?
And then you go work at like ABC Widget Company in Montana,
Yes.
and they're like, no, bye.
No. Oh, 100%. 100%. Right. And I worked for other brand name companies, SunGard, now FIS. I worked for a company called Financial Models, which was the first major acquisition by a company called SS&C. So some big brand companies that I worked for, but also spent a good amount of time in the later part of my career, certainly, with companies that didn't have that brand. So, you see both sides of it. And I would say for the smaller companies, nothing but jealousy, to be perfectly honest with you,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. But before we kind of jump to where you're going today and talk a little
Yeah.
bit, I worked on a sales and trading floor. And as I look back on it, that kind of, what's the right word? Rambunctious kind of, piss taking, making fun, loud, interacting. Like, to me, that was kind of where I learned a lot of my sales skills. You talk about listening to people, clients, human interaction. What was your kind of memories or experience of working in that environment?
Oh, the trading floor was great, right? I love the fact that you're on a big floor with literally hundreds of people that you can interact with, and you can interact with anybody because you're there. So you could learn about derivatives, you could learn about muni bonds, right? Just by going over and talking to people or having lunch with people. So that communal, even though people were really locked on their desks, you still had that opportunity to meet with a lot of interesting people. And again, going into a firm like that, there's a lot of super smart people, right? Where they are able to recruit from the top firms, and they might not always have the sales skills, but they're always sharp. They're always smart. And so I learned a lot from them. I love that vibe. Again, I'm to date myself, we're talking about the late 80s as well. So it was a completely different time before, even before the internet, right? The internet, I still remember
Sure.
when I did my submission for NYU for grad school. I was talking about this new thing called the internet, where the question was, if you were on a deserted island, what would you bring with you? And I had heard about the internet and listening to music. And it was, anyway, I'm
So
old.
did hold on, did you write I would bring the internet to the island?
I did, so I could listen to music. I
Oh my
did, I
God,
did.
you You
It
were
was like
ahead
a
of your
cheat code.
time.
It was almost like a cheat code, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
But I also think that the thing I learned from so I worked on the trading floor at E-Trade, is the speed of sales. You know, when that phone rang, I mean, you were a trader as well, right? First call, first to pick it up, which I think is still incredibly important in sales today.
Yep.
I have never worked since then in an environment that treats the speed of sale or the speed of sales with such reverency, with such focus. Because in reality, if you don't pick up that phone or don't answer the client, they're phoning someone else, right?
Agreed. And you also have to know who to call. So it's a prioritization thing and understanding your clients and understanding where is my time best spent and going after the ones that you think is going to be a viable opportunity, right? Because you're also competing against other salespeople on the trading floor. So you want to be the first one to get that over the line before somebody else does as well. So there was a level of competitiveness there also.
I totally, and that's the thing that I noticed again later in career. A sale would come in like when I was working elsewhere in technology, and people would float around. Oh, who's getting that? I'm like, wait, this was the trading floor. There would be a shit fight for this.
Yes, exactly, exactly. It changed a lot when I went into fintech, right? Because so I went from institutional sales to market making and foreign exchange, which obviously was very fast paced. And this was again before open outcry. I mean, sorry, this is before electronic trading. So it was all open outcry. You have a bank of speakers of 7 different guys quoting prices, and then you need to distill it and figure it out. And
I I
yeah,
remember the first time before I got into finance. Remember trading places and the open outcry with the orange juice futures,
yes,
and Mortimer and whatever his name was getting sold down the river in open outcry. I think a lot of people listening to this might not even know what we're talking about, but the reality of screaming a price
yes,
to get your sale done.
yeah. The other thing that I really was aware of, certainly as times have changed, is transparency, right? When we would tell the clients where the market was, they didn't know where the market was, right? There was no Bloomberg tickers or any, or in fact, in FX certainly, because FX is such a fluid thing. There was no consolidated number where the market is. We told them where the market is, and it was a very interesting dynamic how you handle orders because of that lack of transparency. So obviously the world has gotten better from an investor perspective, but man, back in the day, it was you do what you do.
When you came to fintech, and I'm interested in this because I talk to people who come from TradFi, right? Like what we did. I generally find again coming to speed or coming to the reality of sales that people who came from perhaps a trading floor, when they got to fintech, found it a bit easier because it wasn't as fast. You came from what I would call a gladiator pit into what I'm going to call it. I don't know what's less than a gladiator pit, but something easier.
Yes. A soft play area. How about
Yeah,
that?
exactly. But on the scale of gladiator pit down to soft play area,
Yes.
where was fintech?
Fintech, it's a completely different challenge, right? There's a lot more competition. You have to identify needs or create need, right? In the markets, people already have a need. They already have a disposition. And it's just a matter of who do they do it with and where do they do it and at what price and which particular issuer, things like that. Fintech is completely different because fintech, you have to create need, you have to nurture relationships, you have to be there when that need, as and when it ever exists, you have to be there. So it's way more, it's a longer term play, right? Relationships mattered in the world of trading floors, certainly, because a lot of times there's ties or they could just as easily do it one versus the other. So relationships are not to be downplayed. And there was a lot of entertaining back in the day, which now isn't even possible. So you don't have that ability many times to be able to forge a relationship on an expense account, shall we say. But in the fintech space, it's more about getting in the door, understanding how they work, what their needs, what their priorities, establish a rapport so that they're willing to pick up the phone again. But it's such a long play, unless of course somebody comes in and with an RFP, and then you're managing that process, and then it's a pre-existing thing, and then you just switch into deal mode. But most of it, at least in my career, was not just reactionary to opportunities.
It's a really good point because in trading and sales, literally clients are calling you. They have to buy this stock or this bond. They're going to do it with somebody. Whereas in fintech, you're creating the demand, which, is a little bit about how to sell, what's your drive to sell, like how do you do it? You have to. I'm interested in your views on that. How do you adapt? So if somebody's starting in sales today, and they think about why do they want to be in sales, how they're going to adapt going forward. What are your thoughts on that, having been through quite a few different sales cycles?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on who you work for, right? Both who you work for as a boss and who you work for as a shop, right? You know, as much as you want to believe, oh, I'm going to come in here and do it my way and change the world, there's processes in place, right? At least at the outset, you need to toe the line and follow the lead and see who's successful on your team and follow their lead while keeping in mind that your boss may have his or her own opinions as to how it goes. But again, the whole thing comes down to just trying to establish a relationship, right? Everything is about the relationship. The products are the products, and the products are going to be a fit or not a fit, and you're going to do your best to make sure that that product is or service is presented in as compelling a way as possible, such that is the natural choice for the potential buyer. But having that rapport, figuring out a way to create that rapport, that's, I think, the special sauce, and it's not for everybody either, right? And actually, talking about old school, right? Old school was like, you're picking up the phone, you're meeting people in person, and now, in this generation coming up, there isn't that comfort level of those human interactions. It's a lot more texting back and forth, even in the same room, texting back and forth, rather than just going over and having a conversation. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic affects future salespeople, but I still think that those who are able to establish a rapport are going to be the ones who are always going to be successful, because people buy from people. It's cliche, but that's it at the end of the day.
I do think, it's right. Without doubt, internet, automation, AI, everything. But in the end of the day, if everybody's got the same level of automation, it's going to come down to relationship, which kind of goes to something that you've talked about a lot, which is access, right? Which is this idea that, and I have some views on that, but why don't you explain what you mean by access, and then there's some interesting things I'd like to chat about it.
Sure, sure. So access to me means being able to get in front of somebody, or at least a Zoom call, but certainly being able to have a dialogue, establish a relationship, establish an understanding, hopefully establish a level of mutual respect, such that they're willing to pick up that phone again. And it goes back to, part of it goes back to who you work for. Right? If you work for a company that people want to talk to, well, then your access is going to be a lot easier. If you work for a company that isn't known and you're not necessarily known in the space, it's hard yards, right? You need to be able to figure out creative ways to be able to secure, again, access in the form of a conversation, ideally in person. Because you and I are both old enough, and to know that that in-person thing, shaking somebody's hand, right, having a story to tell, being in an environment versus this, which is lovely, but you're in Singapore and I'm in the UK, so it's not necessarily viable any other way. And as more people work from home, it becomes that much more challenging to get that face-to-face access. I often joke that unless somebody looks like their LinkedIn profile and you stand outside their offices and they happen to be going to work that day, if they don't want to allow you access, that is really your only way to stalk them, which I don't encourage, by the way, for the
But you
record.
don't. Yeah, hey, needs must sometimes. But okay, so how do we get access? Now, obviously, there's one way, like us, we're old, and we've just done a lot of sales, so we create access through repetition of selling a lot. The other way is to work for a huge company, whether it's a Goldman Sachs or a Google or what else. Is there other ways? So how do we create access?
So, I mean, part of it is going to be networking, right? Networking, the warm introduction is always going to be the best way, right? Now, some people may take that meeting reluctantly as a favor to your common connection, but at least you're in, and then it's, you can shoot your shot, or, and it's yours to lose, if you will. But networking is, I believe, is always going to be the best way in. And then, obviously it's great if you have BDRs banging phones and sending emails and, teeing stuff up for you. Well, hey, that's a nice, easy way to get access. But access is great, but most salespeople have a pretty broad target market. So while they may be able to secure access within a subset of that, the real challenge is, well, how do I get the other people? How do I get in front of the people that aren't necessarily the ones that I can network my way in or have been teed up or through my own efforts have been able to get in? That's really the hard part, because it's still your expectation. It's still your responsibility to at least know what they're using or something. But that part becomes so hard. And it's pretty embarrassing when you have to go to your boss and they're like, what's going on at this shop in your territory? I have no idea. They won't pick up the phone. Well, that's not necessarily a great answer. So you just got to try to figure out new and creative ways. And we'll get to Time to Give network, but that was kind of where my head was at when I'm trying to get into these shops. When I had no brand, no real brand when I moved over here, and no brand from a company perspective. So I was going in super cold.
And this word creative, like, I think this is going to become more and more important, in that it's easier and easier to send cold emails, right? Because you can automate it. But the response rate's getting lower and lower because people are like, oh, I'm sick of it, right? Yeah. And access is about somebody wanting to speak to you. You're right. It's about getting in front. And this is what I think there's this double layer I was thinking about. Getting in front, but also creating that, oh, I want to speak to this person, which will lead me down the content path. Obviously, I love LinkedIn, doing things like this. What's your thought on that? Which is, access is one thing. So the best one is a referral. Hey, I know this person, you call a friend and say, hey, this person needs to talk to you. But how do we create access that's useful, in that I got in front of you, but we've got to make sure they want to hear to us? How do we do a good job? How do we kind of maximize access?
No, well, I mean, again, there's so many cliches in sales, but it's all about listening, right? It's all about asking those leading questions. It's all about being able to extract information and play off that information, because it's not necessarily about getting in front of somebody and saying, "Hey, I have this great solution and it would be great for you." You can add value in other ways. If they have a pain point and you know somebody else that might be able to solve that pain point, being able to build goodwill is a huge building block of a relationship, right? There's other things you can relate to them, right? I'm a big motorcyclist. Man, if I could ever find a motorcyclist, man, we have a great time, right? Or I play bass guitar, and if I could find somebody else, that kind of thing, right? So you always you're trying to pull at things that are not necessarily about what you're selling. It's about building in that limited window of time, of course, too, right? You have to be very efficient in that time, because if you have a half hour, you have a half hour. If you have an hour, that actually allows you time maybe to go a little more off-piste.
Interestingly, a good friend of mine, he's a young guy, doing cold calling right now, and it's very, very hard. He says the one thing that wins him the most trust and continues the conversation, when somebody says, how did you get my number? I'm sure you know what Zoom Info is. Zoom Info
Sure.
is the, most people listening to this podcast will know it's probably the most expensive and the best kind of database of all information. And he tells them, hey, if it's John, hey, John, your number's on Zoom Info, which is a database with all your numbers. I can show you how to take that number off Zoom Info. Would you like me to help you with that?
Wow, I like that.
Right? And in that moment, he's doing two things. The person stops for a minute and goes, yeah, I'd like that. And number two is has to now give Tony, my friend, a bit of time, because Tony's going to do something nice for him. So yes. Say, oh yeah, thanks. Anyway, so why were you calling again? And it's that really interesting. So, his access is just a phone. He just phones a lot of people. But if they ask him that question, he says, oh, I'll see if I can. And he does have a way to get it off Zoom Info. And it really made me think about access, is that if you get access and then rush forward and go, hi, my name's Ned. I sell ABC. ABC is really good at doing this. You should buy it. All the customers like it, and just verbal diarrhea your way through the conversation. You're wasting access, which is criminal.
Yes. And that first meeting is hopefully just a foundation, right? I mean, obviously it is hard. People are busy, and getting back in is hard, and it takes time. but the whole thing just takes patience. Because you'd also like to believe that they're not, once you have your foot in the door, if they're even thinking about purchasing something that you can offer, that you're already going to get a look, right? You'll get a look because you're in the door and they're not going to, and as long as there's enough of a relationship and they understand that there's enough of a fit, you'll get a look. Then it's about growing and then like not just getting a look, but maybe being the one to help shape the RFP because you have that relationship as, you know, and you, that's all.
But this comes to also being smart. It's like, keeping up to date data. Oh, you called them 9 months ago. They said, oh, we're doing our, the contract runs out next year. Or that they signed, an RFP, something's coming up. Or you read in the paper, a fintech just got a huge investment. Or, the timing of the access is something that I think most people don't think about enough. Because you could have access any time, but if you are patient enough and wise enough, you want it at the right time.
Yeah, I agree. It's timing is everything at the end of the day, right? But you can also create your own luck, as far as being there at the right time and, being studious. And, again, AI makes things a lot easier depending on your budget and depending on your tools as far as being able to monitor things like this, right? It goes back all the way to what we were talking about before about where I was saying about transparency, right? Before, this type of information wasn't easily accessible. So, there's no excuse now to not know what's going on, unless, of course, your company doesn't have budget or you don't have budget or you're not setting things up properly, with the free options of following things to be able to really understand.
There's always a way. But you said it was about timing, which is a nice segue into time to give. Tell us, because this is how we connected. I remember when he first showed it to me, I was like, that's interesting. And I think, I said I'm busy, which was like a shitty excuse because everyone's busy, but I was like, I'll do something else. And then it came back in my radar. I was like, it's actually a pretty cool idea, which comes back to your point about access, et cetera. So what are you working on now?
So the driver for Time to Give Network was that challenge of access, right? You asked me, I moved over here. I was in the fund administration, like accounting in the hedge fund space, and moved over here. It was supposed to be temporary, and I fell in love with the idea of living in the UK, and I petitioned to stay, and they let me stay. 15 years later, happy here and love it. But the company that I came over with and the company that I joined subsequent to that organization both had no brand. I was their man on the ground. I didn't have any pre-sales or any local support. So it was really all me all the time. And I had to do everything from hunting to farming and all of it. But the hunting part was hard because we didn't have brand. And I didn't personally have brand. And I was spending so much company time and money in the form of salary, just wasting my time with pithy emails and relevant LinkedIn messages and yelling into the void, right? And I was like, I may as well go walk the dog. This is going to be just as effective, right? And you do your networking, but depending on what space you're in and who and it's going to be a grind, and you have numbers to hit. So I was just super frustrated about this gross inefficiency. Maybe it was the American in me, I don't know, but it was grossly an inefficient process. And cost of acquisition of a meeting was really high when you incorporate everything, including my salary. So I wanted to come up with a solution that solved that problem of access, because everybody faces it, as mentioned, right? You can always get into a subset of your target market, but there's always going to be those firms that no matter how hard you try. So whether it's a subset, whether it's all of it, whether it's going into new markets, getting that access is hard. And I wanted to fix that. And so I always was a big eBay guy. So I used to be a foreign exchange trader before I went into fintech. And so once I was done with trading, I used eBay a lot. That was where I got my action. And I loved how eBay allowed things to realize their intrinsic value, right? So rather than going to a boot sale here, right, and hoping that somebody comes by, you put it on eBay and you open it up to the whole world. As a result of my interest in eBay, I was aware that Warren Buffett famously for 10 years auctioned a lunch on eBay, and he raised over $50 million for this charity called Glide in San Francisco. I was like, well, every in-demand executive, every in-demand person, there's intrinsic value in that time, because basically what that last person paid $17 million for that lunch was that's what it went for it.
So just a little interjection into that story. I'll let you carry on. The very first person, or the first or second year he auctioned it, a friend of mine in Singapore who who had done very well over generational and was sufficiently wealthy, brought the lunch for 250K. So he was one of the early guys, and he got lunch for 250K, which is a lot for a lunch, but given it's 17 million, that's
Yeah.
he got a good deal.
Yeah, exactly. I even bid $27,000 for a lunch with Ray Dalio, who's started Bridgewater,
Of
one of the
course.
largest hedge funds in the world, hoping I wouldn't win. I just really wanted to see the process, so I didn't win. He went for 80 grand, which I still think was he could have done better. But that was when I was investigating this, this whole process. But basically, the thinking is, if Warren Buffett can make himself available for a charitable donation, then anybody can make themselves available for a donation to a charity that's near and dear to their heart. And if I see a compelling ROI on that donation in order to get in front of that person, whether it's because it's super important or just because it's been very difficult or any reason at all for me to want to get in front of that person, if I and my company feel that the ROI on that charitable donation is compelling, well, everybody wins, right? And the best part of the story to me was that, going back to what we were talking about building a rapport, right? Think about this. You're a salesperson. You expense that 300 pounds, let's say, to get in front of a COO, because that's typically where we're seeing that price point in time to give now. 200 pounds, 300 pounds, like crazy cheap to get an hour of somebody's time, right? But as a salesperson, first, you're expensing that money. Second, you rock up and looking like a hero, and you spent in the first 10 minutes talking about that charity, right? Why did you pick that charity? Just like I would talk about motorcycles or music or whatever. This is a great opener, right? And you've created a value exchange. And that's the key, right? A lot of we're talking about bankers trust. Like, if we were getting in front of people, they want to know what we see and what was going on. But in the rest of the world, they're not that interested in your thought leadership necessarily or trends you're seeing. It would be nice, but it's certainly not worth blocking off an hour out of their calendar, right? But now they're invested, right? You've created the value exchange that didn't exist before. They're raising money for a charity that they care about, and you've come correct, as I sometimes say, right? It makes my company look better from a corporate social responsibility, showing, hey, we're not about blasting you with emails and putting you in some cadence that you don't want to be in, if you even know you're in a cadence, because most people don't even see those emails anyway, right?
Sure.
But you're just doing it purposefully, and you're respecting their time. You're showing how important they are to you because you're willing to make this investment. And everybody wins, right? They raise money for charity. They learn something. They meet somebody that's relevant in their network, right? Who at least peripherally, it's free money for their charity of choice, and I get that access that I desire, and hopefully it's worthwhile.
It's such a nice way to frame it. There's a value exchange here
Mm,
in that, and again, I remember seeing Warren Buffett's thing. I was like, wait, $250,000 at the time, my friend got it, seemed a lot for a lunch, but I was like, wait, it's Warren Buffett, and he gives it to charity. So Warren
yes.
Buffett's happy, the chariot's happy, my friend was happy, everybody seemed happy. Sure, someone's got to put money down, but it
Yeah.
seems to be purposeful. Obviously, Warren Buffett has enough money of his own that he doesn't need more of that. But your point is that you've based it around the access, which is what a lot of salespeople want, and
Mm.
this is a very elegant way of getting it.
Yeah, and it's just different. It's like I'm not saying to do it for everybody, but it's an arrow in the quiver, right? So the way we're set up, as opposed to an auction, now we can run auctions, but right now think about it more like a buy it now option, right? So
Yep.
those that make themselves available, we call them time givers, and they control everything. They control the day, the time, the location, the duration, whether it's Zoom or in person. They choose the charity. So we have a connection to Just Giving. So here in the
Yep.
UK, they can choose any one of 27,000 charities. We're moving to the US within a month or two, and that's going to add 1.4 million charities on day one that these people can choose from, which is fantastic. Have a great relationship with Just Giving. So they control all aspects of it. But one aspect of it, which I never understood from the Warren Buffett model, is how is Berkshire Hathaway okay with Warren Buffett meeting some narco terrorist that just happened to be the high bidder? There's no rails on this thing, right? And I also don't want to put any of our time givers in a position where it's a complete waste of their time. And even if they're raising a few £100 for charity, it's not necessarily a good
Sure. So
experience.
how do you monitor that?
Well, so, and again, we're focused largely in the UK financial services industry, so we had to deal with a lot of compliance issues, right? So the way we got around that in the benefit to benefit everybody is a double opt-in model. So now these time givers, when they make themselves available, on the other side, those seeking access, the salespeople or those seeking access for expertise or networking or whatever their driver is, they have saved searches. So in the profile of that time giver, whether it's in the bio or some of the metadata tags that we associate with people, if they trigger a search, like let's say any CEO that comes on in the asset management space, I want to know about it, right? So when that CEO comes on, I'm alerted at 9 o'clock the next day. I log in, I look at his profile. There's a link to his LinkedIn profile, so I could really do some research on that person as well. Once I see who that is and I figure out whether or not this is someone that's worth, let's say, £500 for me to have an hour with, I then needs to send an indication of interest to that time giver.
An IOI, good
An
old school stuff.
IOI,
An
exactly. I use
IOI.
that on purpose, just from a trading perspective. But yes, so they need to send an IOI with a note so the time giver can see their profile and their note, and then they can go back and say, hey, you know what? I have a compliance issue, or I don't want to waste your time. I don't think I can help you. Thanks, but no thanks. So that protects the time giver from a compliance perspective, personal preference perspective, etc. It also protects the time bidder because if this person has consciously decided to meet with that person, well, now they're going to be stuck in, right? They would rather be say, hey, it would be a waste of time and save your money and save your time. But they know that if it's been accepted, then this person knows what they're getting themselves into and they know who they're meeting with. And you now, not free reign, but it's yours.
The double opt-in model makes sense. Separately, I wonder if Warren Buffett ever did sit down with a narco terrorist, but maybe we'll never know. And separately, it's everyone knows what the game kind of is, particularly if it's sales. If I was selling, fintech, asset management fintech, and I got to meet the, head of a asset manager, they kind of know what it is. But there's three, as you say, the first 10 minutes is, hey, we did 10,000, £300 to a mental health charity, and we all feel good about that. And sure, we're going to chit chat about stuff, and they know that there is some value exchange further down the line as well. But it's a lot better than a spammy cold email sequence and just doing that, right?
And think about the memorability of that meeting. There, as a salesperson, your career could go here, her career could go here, but she'll always remember you. She'll always remember that meeting because of the nature of that meeting, right? So it's not just the meeting; it's that foundation at a whole nother level.
Where is the business at today? So I don't think I've actually asked you this. Where is it at? Are you in initial stages? Whereabouts are you at? Because the concept feels like, as you say, early days of eBay, we were getting used to it. Early days of the internet, we're getting used to it. But when I think about this concept of access for charity, for time, but also business purpose, feels like it could catch on.
I mean, I don't see this model is universal, right? Like I joke around a lot. I'm like, if anybody out there has access to Taylor Swift, right? Because Taylor Swift is a perfect example, right? She could auction off a half-hour Zoom call, and maybe some billionaire father of a Swiftie is willing to donate a few $100,000 to have his little girl talk to Tay
For
Tay and
sure.
all her friends, right?
For sure. For
It's
sure.
everybody. It's everybody and everything. We have a new feature that we're adding called overtures, where all the time giver gives is an hourly rate and a charity. And then I have the ability to go to that person and say, hey, we're hosting a roundtable and we'd love for you to speak, right? The roundtable's for an hour, maybe hang out for another hour, maybe a half hour each way commute. We'll give you 3x of your charitable hourly rate to come. Or maybe we want to play a round of golf with you, right? Really get to know you. We'll give you 7x of your hourly rate to come play a round of golf and really allow a lot more creativity from those seeking access rather than just a meeting. So what this starts to do is turn it into where that donation is, it's basically just for it's a currency, really, that allows for the value exchange without lining people's pockets and worrying about all the optics and the compliance and all that. So yes, I have huge plans for this because it's my target addressable market is every in-demand human being and everybody who seeks access for any reason that otherwise can't get it, which is insane, right? So where we are now, to shrink it way down, so we launched here in the UK, and we now have over 300 executives on the platform. We've facilitated over 50 connections. We've raised money for dozens of charities, and we've added pipeline. We've added people that have new and valuable network relationships, and so the model is proven. People are willing to offer their time in return for donations. People are willing to make donations in return for access. Charities, it's a no-brainer because we don't charge them anything. So the product is up and running and built, and now we want to take it to the next level. A very big part of our USP, however, because I was in sales for so long, and we were talking earlier about the drivers for sales. Like for me, sales wasn't necessarily about money. It was actually more of the challenge, right? Going from nothing to something and getting, it was very gratifying for me to be able to close deals. Money's good, but it wasn't my driver. So when I started Time to Give Network, I really wanted to prove that everything doesn't have to be commercial. So we launched as a not-for-profit. And here in the UK, there's a unique structure called a community interest company, which means we can't pay dividends. There's no equity because technically we're owned by a third party charity. So there's no exit, right? And at the end of the year, any excess revenue we generate over and above operating expenses, we donate to all the charities that raise money via the platform over the course of the year, to hopefully further incent them to go to their trustees and patrons and volunteers and say, hey, can you put yourself up on Time to Give Network? Because not only do they get that money, but they get the year-end money. So I really, really wanted to do this altruistically. I really wanted to prove that everything doesn't have to be commercial. And to be honest, like I didn't want that I made the post-trade process more efficient on my tombstone. Right. I wanted to, there's a bit of a legacy play here as well. Right. So for me, and it's part of our USP, I want to be able to partner with the corporate social responsibility department of organizations and say, hey, here's a free tool, partner with this not-for-profit and encourage your employees to raise money for charity without even having to leave their office. So, and it also potentially squeezes out competition, right? Because why would you, if this concept, which I think it really should take off, there could be competition, but why would you do it on a for-profit platform when you could do it on a not-for-profit platform that just exists to deliver a free utility to the world?
I love that. I don't want on my tombstone that I made post-trade more efficient. I maybe some people do, and it's not that it's not important in the world of finance. For anybody who doesn't understand, that's like the plumbing of finance. That's like saying, I made the plumbing better, which is a necessity for it. Do you have to sell to the time givers? Do time givers just willingly say, sure? Or even if it's for charity, do you still have to sell to them the concept?
Yeah, that's been a bit of an eye opener, right? Even though it's raising money for charity and they control everything, the problem is that this is new, right? Sometimes I wish I was just selling a widget, a better widget. Hey, widgets? This is why our widget's better, right? End of. I have to not only evangelize a completely new concept, but many times people in their mind have preconceived notions or pushback, right? Like, what's the worst case here? Like, some people may say, hey, I put myself up there and I'm going to get peppered by all these people because I already get peppered and people are going to want to meet with me. And I'm like, it's not like that. Think about it like eBay, right? You're selling a meeting. If somebody buys that meeting, that goes away. You're not selling it, just like eBay. You're not selling anything until you're good and ready and sell another meeting, and then and only then will people say that, right? So I've tried to make sure, but yet people are always concerned about things, and then there's just friction, and then I gotta chase, and then I get them over the line, but it does require chasing. And the problem is I'm CRO, CEO,
Well,
CPO.
the,
So I have
I,
bandwidth.
so, but you're right. Look, there's friction even in something like this, which is it has clear value. You've got to do it all. Talking about doing it
Yes.
all, is it just you at the moment? Is there more? Tell us a little bit about the journey of building this.
Sure, sure. So now we're in this phase from funding,
Okay.
because now I need to scale. We've proven
Yep.
it. I've been able to
Nice.
get over those 300 people on the platform. I've gotten 98% of them, right? There's not a lot of, natural inbound flow. So
Sure.
what we need to do from a funding perspective, that's where I want to bring on salespeople. And we currently have a commission only model, right? If anybody wants to come on and if they have relationships within the vendor community, software and service provider, then we're happy to have a commission only model. We have volunteers. We're going after students because this is one, right? Like students who want to get a career in sales but don't have any experience, we can bring them on. And again, typically from a time bidder perspective, it's the head of sales, it's CROs, it's CEOs. That's my target market. So if they come on as a volunteer intern for this not-for-profit venture that's trying to raise money for charity, then they can go after these CROs and heads of sales, or even just salespeople, just to get some traction. Say, hey, there's this new tool that will help you to fill the top of the pipeline, and can I tell you about it? And then they're able to have a new LinkedIn connection. They're able to show if they go for a job when they graduate, I've been able to hunt, I've been able to close, because it's not a very hard close once you get in, right? And I've been able to, do good for the world, right? So I really want to start recruiting students that want to be able, and they can go after any industry, like we mentioned before, even though we're focused on financial services. If they want to get into pharmaceuticals, well, start calling pharmaceuticals. And from a funding perspective, there's two streams. One is sponsorship, right? So companies that want to align themselves with this altruistic venture and from a CSR perspective and getting the right eyeballs and the right reputational bump. So that's one of the ways that we've historically been able to raise money. And then the other is philanthropically, because the way this works is if we can raise X, we can then spend that towards marketing and hiring salespeople. Because I still need proper salespeople. You and I both know, like, getting interns is going to be fine, but I still need some escalation point.
And look, to the point, you're doing so much of it, and you're right. You're the best salesperson for Time to
Yes.
Give right now, but it is not scalable completely
No.
because you just can't be. It's super cool, man. Like, I love it that you're doing it. I will absolutely recommend people to it.
Appreciate it. Can I tell one more thing?
I
Just one more thing from a value perspective, real quick, just from a salesperson's perspective, right? Because when I had like 14 people on the platform, right, that was hard, right? I'm like, because we charge £150 for a seat license, right, which gives unlimited annual seat license, right? That's our commercial model, and we charge 10% on top of the donation. So when I originally went to a CRO and I said, hey, here's this great tool, well, who do you have? Well, I have 14 people and you probably don't care about any of them. And this is key to the salespeople, is we ask them for a list of all the people that they want to meet and put a number next to it. And then we go out and go to those people and say, hey, a member of our not-for-profit community has indicated they're willing to donate X to your charity of choice if you could take 5 minutes and sign up, and make it target rich for them. Or in their cold outreach, they say, hey, we're part of this not-for-profit venture. There's a full audit trail. There's no backhanders. We believe in doing things differently, right? Rather than spending money on a trade show, we'd rather donate that to charity. And we've done our research, and we appreciate that you're busy, and we appreciate the value exchange, and we'd be happy to donate X to your charity of choice in their cold outreach as part of it. Because then even if they say no, they would have said no anyway, but at least they might think, hey, that company's trying to do things differently, or that guy's trying to do things differently. Right? So use this as a tool yourself. We'll hunt for you. And that's how we grow the community, by having our people identify who they want and bringing them in. And that's worked well.
It's cool, man. Two sides of it. If I was, a student, they do this, they are getting access and they're helping. On the other side, you need to go get Ray Dalio, not 27, just get him on the platform. Like,
Yes.
Ray, come on.
Yes.
Dude. Let's
Yes,
go.
yes. Actually, that's one of the things, like for these students, we now have some interns coming in, and I'm like, go get stars, get brand names, right? It's great to get the COO of the hedge fund, but get brand names, right? Oh, let's
And
go big.
you tell them an email to Ray Dalio is the same as an email to John Smith. It's just an
Agreed.
email. They're just a human.
Agreed.
That's the other thing. To kind of wrap it up from old school sales to new school sales. Everybody's just a human. Doesn't matter if they're like Warren Buffett or John Smith. You can just send them a message.
Sure. And hope. But yeah, but actually, I'm even starting to think about maybe snail mail. I don't know if any of your people ever talk about snail mail, but that would get opened, right?
So, so go look at my LinkedIn post today. There's a new Gen Z term called friction maxing, which is the idea to do things in a harder fashion because life's got too easy. So don't order takeaway, cook. Don't watch a movie, read a book. Don't use Google Maps or GPS, use a map. And I was thinking about it from a sales perspective. Don't send a cold email, send a handwritten letter.
Yes. Yes.
It would. How many people are going to throw away? I like this idea. When you get an RFP, always DHL a hard copy of the RFP as well as email because no one's going to throw away a DHL envelope.
Right. Right.
No.
And I'd also like to believe from the time to give network perspective, no executive assistant's going to throw this away when her boss or his boss can do this.
DHL, a written letter to Ray
Yes.
Dalio, offering
Yes.
him to be on time to give network. I mean,
Okay.
do it.
That's
Do
it.
it, man.
And I'll come back on this
Do it.
podcast and tell you how it went.
Seriously, man, you are 1,000,000% coming back on no matter what. But you get Ray Dalio on, oh my God,
Yeah.
you
All
got
right.
listen.
I'm on a mission.
And Andrew, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I wish you all the best. And look, honestly, straight up, just to say, solving access, super important. Like I really do think so. It's very cool. I don't let any guests go without two questions. They are just philosophical questions, so you can whatever you think about them. First question: if you could live forever, would you?
No. No. I think every good run feels like a good run, and there will inevitably be times during that lifetime of forever that would be bad enough that I'm a quit while you're ahead potentially guy.
Fair enough. And everyone's got different views on it. Good on you. Okay. And the other more light-hearted but philosophical question: if you could only eat one food and one food only for the rest of your life and have no health impacts, what food would it be and why?
Wow. I can never get enough of avocados. I don't know why that is. I mean, I guess it's pretty healthy too. And I remember going to California, visited my cousin out there, and they were like 25 cents. And I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Yeah, I just have an avocado thing. I don't eat that many avocados necessarily, but that's a pretty random answer to your very straightforward question.
Hey, it is a philosophical question. There it is. All right. Well, I tell you what. You get Ray Dalio on. I'll send you as many avocados as you want. All right.
I appreciate that. Excellent. That's a deal. Thanks very much.
It has been a pleasure having you on, Andrew. We'll speak soon. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Look forward to it. Cheers.